Hello everybody, and welcome to my basic mechanics tutorial for Minecraft. In this one I thought I would try and throw a few things in together, basically tie them into one video just so people won't have to search through. So essentially we're going to cover water, redstone, doors and railway in this. It's just basic stuff really, but it's all very helpful stuff to learn, and you'll find that you can tie stuff in as you go along. So we'll start off with the basics. Water. So essentially water can only run for 8 blocks and then it comes to a stop. If you happen to put a step in, so you remove the 8th block, essentially the water then resets and will travel for a further 8 blocks from what you've just put down. Same applies for if you're putting corners in. So essentially the step down and then you can have another step down, and the flow of water will always flow 8 blocks from the final step down. As you can see there, it then runs 8 blocks. There are many things that can be used to stop the flow of water. Here are a couple of examples. So we have a pressure plate, we have a sign, we have a gate, trapdoor and a standard door. All of these can be used to block water. And here we have a small example of how to put a step in. So if you were moving zombies around, if you have a spawner and you're looking to move mobs, maybe you just want to move them around just a couple of steps or move them up slightly without building in a soul sand elevator. I do have a soul sand elevator on my channel if you would like to check it out. As you can see here, this just creates a little step that brings them up 1 block. You can add as many steps in as you want. It really all depends on sort of essentially where you're moving the mobs to. Here's an example of it in one of my spawners. So this is just simply for test purposes to show you what it does, but essentially you get the little step up and then the mobs, as I said, get pushed into the soul sand elevator and then around, and they just carry on in a loop. So very handy for just simply really moving mobs around. But the water is handy to know the physics of it and the mechanics of it, just so later on when you're building your spawners. Okay, on to doors. So doors, essentially, you know yourselves, you can just open them normally, but if you put a pressure plate down in front of them, the door then acts automatically. You can also add a lever down. Now if you add a lever in, this will fix the door in an open position until you adjust the lever. So if you can push the buttons and you can walk on the pads until you've switched that back up. There you go. And you can put switches and levers on either the bottom or the top. Metal doors you can't open normally, so you have to use either a pressure plate, a switch or a lever, or essentially just some sort of power in order to get the door to open. You can't open it just normally. And here it's a bit more complicated one. It's a set of double doors. I'm actually going to make a tutorial to put this together. It's a very simple build and I will break it down into easy steps. Okay, onto redstone. This is a redstone block. You can make that out of just gathering normal redstone, and then you've got your redstone torch and then normal redstone. So the redstone block and the redstone torch act as a power supply, whereas redstone on its own doesn't. Now a torch powering redstone will run for 15 blocks, as you can see. So the piston's up, the 16th block doesn't go. Now apart from the torch, you can use other methods to power your redstone. Now sometimes you may want to put a long line of redstone down, but it doesn't meet where you need it to go. So if you put down a repeater, the repeater will extend the signal for another 15 blocks, as you can see there. So with the torch in place, it then extends outwards. Sometimes you may want to build vertically. You may want to power vertically. Now, rather than having to lay down lots and lots of redstone all the way up in a spiral, this is a very straightforward way of doing it with torches. So as you can see there, I have a repeater in the floor, a little bit of redstone, and then the redstone that leads to either your lever or your switch. Now, the way that this works is the bottom torch is on, but as soon as I pull the lever, the bottom switch will go off and the one above it will turn on, and so on and so forth until it reaches the top. So as you can see there, push the button and you just get the single pulse. If you pull the lever, and it stays on permanently. Now here I've built, these two builds are identical with the exception of the block that sits in the center. So as you can see there, a normal block will block the actual redstone signal from reaching the piston. But if you lay a glass block down, this doesn't actually block the signal. Okay, moving on to rail. Okay, you've got four types of rail. You have your standard rail, you have your powered rail, you have your detector rail, and you have your activator rail. I will give a demonstration of what each of these do in just a moment. So powered rail, if you have a torch on it, will extend for 9 blocks. As you can see there, the 10th block isn't powered. Certain ways you can lay torches, that will not work. But if you put the torch once to the side and you have your wire facing in towards the redstone, you'll notice it will work. And you'll also notice it if it's next to it, it will work. And you can also choose this method for hiding, which is under the block, and that also works. So now we're going to move into basic minecarts and minecart setups. So if you're just looking for a simple stop and go, create 2 bits of track, put your cart on top, and then push the button, and that's it, you are away. I am going to do a more detailed video on railways and how to put them together. Sometimes you might want a continuous power line. This will become more apparent later on in the video, and also for future builds. So you may want a cart that just simply moves backwards and forwards between 2 locations. Now sometimes you want to be able to travel a long distance, but you don't want to be able to put lots of torches down. So you can put in a detector rail. You notice I put in a detector rail just before those 2 bits of power rail. Now a detector rail essentially can create power for the rail that's just going to come after it. So as you can see here, as we start off, we'll come up towards the end of the loop and we'll start to slow down. It's at this point that you would normally put down a bit of extra powered rail just to take you a bit further on. But with the detector rail down, that gives us power and then sends us on. Okay, so now we're going to show you how activator rails work. So I've got detector rail just before the activator rail. As I said, the detector rail basically powers the rail that you need. Now the activator rail simply kicks you off. That's what it does. It empties you from the minecart whenever you hit that rail. Again, I'll make a more detailed video showing off railways and how these things can be put to use, but that's simply how or what they are for. Okay, detector rails can also put out power. So I've put one there, and as you can see I've put in a little bit of redstone either side with just some pistons on it. This is just to demonstrate that whenever you then ride across that that bit of track, it sends a redstone signal out which activates the pistons. Now it doesn't have to be pistons, it could be a set of doors that you have opening, it could be some lights coming on. This little bit of track here, because of the way that the mechanics work, I've put it just so I could create a loop, but essentially the way that the track works, this would allow me to drive forward and go back on myself, whereas that side there curved round to the right. Again, I'll make another video demonstrating more of this and going into more depth on railways. Okay, so for this example, let's just say you've got one base but you've got two locations that you want to travel to. So at the moment the track is set to basically go off to the right, but let's just say you actually want to travel to the base on the left. With a flick of the switch you can get the track to switch direction. So it's now to the left, flick the switch and the track comes back to the right. Now this is just exactly the build that I've just shown off, but I've raised it up so it's out of the ground so you can actually see what I've done. So essentially there's the crossover that I want. All I've done is put a redstone torch underneath that on top of a block with a repeater going into that, and then my line of redstone which simply connects to the lever which allow me to switch the tracks, as you can see there. Okay, so we've got our start. Now what do we do if we want to put a little base in between? So we want a nice little easy to use start-stop method. So let's just say this is the second location. We've got a third location that will be afterwards, but this is the one that we want to stop at. So again, jump in, hit the button, this goes up, we hit that little brick and it brings us to a stop. Now from there we can either get out to our location or we can push the button which continues us on to our next location. Okay, what about if we've reached the final destination and we simply want our carts to go into a sorter where we can collect them later? So all we've done here is we've built exactly the same thing, but we've put some glass around the edges, we've removed the button, and we've put a pressure plate in its place. So whenever we touch we get off and we step on the pressure plate, that will send the cart along this way, up the track, and into the cactus at the end. Now the reason that we do that is because the cactus will break the cart, which will then send it into the hopper, which will then move it down and into the chest beneath it. Again, I will make a more detailed video basically showing all of these things in clarity. This is just a basic demonstration of the kind of things that you can do. As you can see there, cart went up into the hopper and then appears in our chest. These are all very basic and simple builds, and I will be making more tutorials, including spawner tutorials I have coming up. I will show how to make the double doors as well. I will make them all very, very simple builds and straight to the point as well. And there you have it. That is a nice little setup. It's also a nice beginner setup. It's very easy to build. Okay, so the last thing on the list is going to be to show you hopper minecarts. Now, hopper minecarts are a brilliant way of transporting goods from one location to a distant location. So as you can see with the hoppers that I put in before, so these hopper, it basically goes into that chest with a cart that track that runs above the hopper. So if you put down a minecart hopper and you send that on its way, every time that it drives over the hopper at the end, whatever content it is carrying, it will drop in there. So anything that I put in this chest, the hopper minecart will collect on its way round. So just put some gunpowder in there, so the hopper minecart will collect that, it will bring it round and it will drop it into the chest here. This is a fantastic way of transporting goods over long distances, just by simply dumping them in one chest and letting them come to another chest. So I really hope you liked the information that I shared with you today. If this was useful, please like and subscribe. And as I said, more tutorials coming up. Thanks for watching.